stick drift, the bane of all controller players, and the way these controller manufacturers go about combating it is very different. For years, we've been expected to have the use it, chuck it, and fuck it mentality, I guess. Where with potentiometer thumbstick modules, it's just expected that down the road that controller's probably going to get stick drift for you and you're going to have to replace it. And a lot of times with a stocker, the warranties in place were extremely short. For example, with Microsoft, it was 3 months for a long ass time, and that includes their Pro controller line, the Elite 1 and Series 2. It is no longer, it's a 1 year now. But then you've got the magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules, which are fantastic when implemented correctly, meaning high quality modules, well calibrated, responsive, taught inner and outer dead zones, but unfortunately there's a lot of shitty HE thumbstick modules on the market, getting pushed in a lot of cheap third-party Pro controllers for the Switch and Xbox platform, which of course you can use on PC as well, that should be a given. But the beauty of Hall effect thumbstick modules is the fact that there is no physical connection of components. You have a recentering spring which can lose tension on you over time, which is pretty unlikely, but that can give you stick drift. And unlike taking apart a potentiometer module and cleaning a potentiometer sensor or wiping off that little carbon contact patch, there's really nothing you can do at that point other than get a new Hall effect thumbstick module. But another option that these manufacturers love to use is the swap it with a replacement module. We've seen this with the DualSense Edge, the first party offering from Sony, but unfortunately there's two problems with this approach. The first one is that you're still getting the issue in the first place, and then you're paying shekels, ducats, or rupees to replace it. And unfortunately, when implemented not well, like what PDP did with the Victrix, there's still no authorized first-party replacement modules. There's some third-party janky boys you can find online, but PDP absolutely should have handled the modular approach, just like Sony having those replacement modules ready from PlayStation Direct and on Amazon, although they are in and out of stock more frequently out than in, I have seen, so that's unfortunate. But another little perk or benefit of those modular controllers is that it opens up the world of third-party aftermarket parts, so you can get a Hall effect version to replace the potentiometer thumbstick modules. But a far less common approach to combat this very common issue with stick drift is what Hex Gaming is doing with the Phantom controller, or the Fatouche, if you will. He doesn't like being called Fatouche. He's earned the name amongst his comrades to be called the Phantom. For about 3 years, these PCBs have existed that allow you to solder these add-on chips, these recalibration boards, to the back of a stock board for a Microsoft, Sony, or nobody's doing this to Nintendo controllers, but you could as well. And what it allows you to do is use, I don't know why I sounded like that, to do here. What it does allow you to do is to use a cross-tip or Phillips head screwdriver to calibrate the horizontal and vertical axes of your potentiometer thumbstick modules when they inevitably get stick drift for you down the road. And for a lot of us, that is a long-assed road. I say this all the time. I have a lot of guides around stick drift, but me personally, I've had some gamepads that I have owned. I know a lot of you don't like when I call controllers and gamepads the same thing interchangeably, but 'tis what it is. I've had some of the controllers over shoulder and in the living room for like 3.5 years. For example, my Elite Series 2 is my first batcher. That's why it's kind of crazy when I read comments and it's like, brother, I went through my 6th controller this month. What are you doing, my friend? No wonder a lot of y'all are leery to approach buying a $300 Pro controller if you're getting drift in 6 months. I wouldn't either. But if you haven't been touched by it in places you don't like to be touched, then fuck it. You can enjoy life to its fullest when it comes to controllers. That sounded wild. You get my drift. You catch my Tokyo drift here, DK. It ain't Donkey Kong. I veered off course, but I'm getting back on target.
Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target. Loosen up!
Now, these boards used to be super inconvenient because in order to use them when you did start to develop stick drift, you would need to do a partial teardown or disassembly of the controller to get at them. The way that Hex is implementing them is awesome because it's easily accessible under this little cover or shroud on the top of the controller, so you can get to it easy peasy, squeezy ass lemon. But the issue with these type of recalibration boards, and what prompted me to make this video the entire topic of this long-winded video that you're probably learning a little bit from, hopefully, or at least getting entertained. Hopefully I didn't waste your day here. Now, if we look at the left thumbstick module, I'm going to zoom in post-editing so you can see that crosshair and that dot real close like. Now, unfortunately, this wasn't snapping back to a perfect neutral or perfectly calibrated right out of the box. That left is starting to walk the yard a little bit, and that is noticed in some games with a very aggressive dead zone slider where you can put it to a true 0. I'd be strafing to the left a little bit, sidestepping. So when you use that recalibration board, what it's going to do is it's going to bring, boom, it's going to recalibrate to where I'm not having drift anymore, which I'm not having drift now, but if this gets any further further out, it's going to be noticeable drift in game, even without moving that dead zone slider to the left or turning it down. But what you want to do is recalibrate, boom, right there to where it's at a perfect neutral, feathering over right about there, 0.00392. That's what we like to see, that or 0.0002. The two most common resting values for potentiometer and Hall effect thumbstick modules. That's what you want to calibrate to. But as I bring this over to the right, this now causes an issue where I can no longer reach maximum extension over here on the left. So as I bring this dot to the right, I'm recalibrating my module, counteracting that stick drift. That's awesome. I'm moving this dot to the right, but what happens over here when I'm losing all of this range of motion, all of this registered input on the thumbstick module? And you can clear as day see this when you do a circularity test. You're not really going to see it here because I'm not having this issue. I'm just simulating it for you. As you bring this dot over, you are not going to be reaching the outside of your thumbstick gate. So that means if it's on the left module, you're not strafing full speed. But if that's on the right stick, that means you can no longer aim full speed in any certain direction. And it doesn't have to be left or right. I'm using the horizontal axis. It could be vertical as well, where if you adjust your drift this away, you're now losing range of motion. Let's turn off the circularity test, messing me up visually. As you recalibrate your dead zone downward, you're losing out on range of motion upward. So because of this, hopefully I explained that well with the visual representation. I'm a visual learner and you probably are as well. So because of this, recalibration boards are personally my least favorite means or method of counteracting stick drift, even compared to having nothing at all. Just a good old-fashioned potentiometer controller like we've been using for years, because this is an additional feature that adds to the build cost. In fact, this is the first controller that I've seen with this feature implemented, and it was a Kickstarter campaign, probably so they could test the waters because they didn't know if customers would bite or chomp on. And the controller itself is good, but I just hope that nobody really needs to use that recalibration panel or board on the top, because it is going to introduce less range of motion in whatever direction you are steering the sticks back to. So I gave you a problem. What about the solution? What's the way forward here? Good Hall effect thumbstick modules, which we're starting to see more and more from companies like GameSir and GhouliKit, and some of the third-party modules are pretty solid as well. For example, the K-Silver Blues are some of the most common. Got congested because they're clogging my schnoz here. That's how many of them are on the market. A lot of third-party companies, HYPR, AIM, have steady ready access to those K-Silvers, and those are pretty solid. They're not the best, but they are good, and those are getting put in a lot of third-party Hall effect controllers. I personally also don't like the swappable potentiometer modules like the DualSense Edge or the Victrix, because they're often out of stock, and even when they're not, you're still having to pay to replace a broken part. I've been very lucky. My DualSense Edge, I have a launch edition. That's not a real thing. There's no special edition for it's a first batch. I pre-ordered it from PlayStation Direct and had it delivered on launch day, and I have beaten several games on my PlayStation 5 with that sucker. I think I played all the way through Ghost of Tsushima on that controller. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which I know came out before the DualSense Edge, but I replayed it there on a harder difficulty. Trying to catch me in a lie, aren't you? But the point is, I flick the sticks frequently on that fucker. That was a tongue twizzler. And no drift for me personally, but thank God, because if I did get drift, I'd be screwed because the modules are always out of stock. And that's why I don't like that approach either. So the way forward here is going to be high quality Hall effect thumbstick modules, which we're luckily starting to see more and more of. This has been AK40 Kevin, aka the Controller Captain. You have been a Stallion or Stallionette while you've been watching me. This is the Gamer Heaven, and I will see you tomorrow. Ransack the comment section with some controller talk. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description, because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more Stallions and Stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better, so mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.